like, oh, I've seen these before.
Yeah.
We see websites do these all the time, usually top 10s and it's rosters. I'm here to tell you, all those people do them wrong.
Oh.
Because they treat their roster as if it's actually roster excluding the quarterback. What they are giving you is the best 2 through 53s, which is useful and interesting, but that's not the roster.
No.
Last I checked, if you go to any team's homepage, click on the roster button, there's a whole section for quarterbacks because they are on the roster. So these are the 5 best rosters in the league.
This is what separates you from everybody else.
Exactly.
The quarterbacks are on the roster.
They're literally on the roster, so when we talk top 5 rosters, you should include them. Now, it doesn't mean they're the entirety of it, but they obviously impact it. So number 5, the Cincinnati Bengals. You're not going to see them on anybody else's. It's weird. The same people will be like, hey, 5 teams who could win the Super Bowl, they'll be on there, but top 5 rosters can't do that. Well, I don't know who plays in the Super Bowl. Guys on your roster. Joe Burrow, don't love the hair, do love his attitude. So his quotes this offseason I thought have been excellent, and the things he has said about reminding himself about how much the losing hurts, about how hard he has to work, and I think Joe Burrow has the exact right disposition to come back from a wildly frustrating and disappointing year. Not being healthy at the beginning, playing poorly, finally getting healthy, playing great, and then suffering a freak injury. You add to that, they didn't get rid of T. Higgins like I thought they would. They might pay for that down the road, but this year it helps them. Their defense last year was wildly problematic. They bring in Geno Stone, which I like. They had other players in the secondary. I expect a better year from their edges, Hubbard and Hendrickson. Obviously, I think Chase is going to get it done, and I don't think the loss of Joe Mixon is that significant. And they spent a first-round pick on a tackle. He's banged up, but I like that pick. They're number 5. Number 4. Hey there.
No.
Oh, yeah. The Chicago Bears.
Oh, boy.
I would just like to know what the biggest weakness on the roster is. The answer to that is probably left side of the offensive line, but they have a stud right tackle. They have arguably the best 1 through 3 wide receiver group in the league. Not the best 1 or the best 2, but as far as if Keenan Allen's your number 3, DJ Moore, and I think Rome Odunze is a legitimate number 2 the moment he walks into the league. That's great. I love DeAndre Swift. I know a lot of Eagles fans evidently think they're getting a huge upgrade with Saquon. I don't know that I agree with that. This defense was elite the moment they got Montez Sweat last year. They added help in the secondary. Jalen Johnson's one of the 5 best corners in football. Number 4 roster in the league, the Chicago Bears. Number 3. See, the quarterback being on the roster cuts both ways, boys. Okay. The San Francisco 49ers. Everybody has them as the number 1 roster in football, not me. Now, they do have, assuming everyone, I'm assuming Ayuk is gone, but I'm assuming Trent Williams is there. I understand Trent Williams is not currently coming to camp, but nobody thinks he's going anywhere. You have the best left tackle in football, one of the best edges in football, one of the 3 or 4 best tight ends in football, to go along with, when you get Hufanga back, one of the best safeties in football and the best running back in football. I think they will miss Ayuk, assuming he's gone, but maybe at this point, maybe they're able to keep him. You're fine at quarterback. I don't think you're great at quarterback. I don't think you're dead at quarterback. And I also think some of the additions they have tried to make recently to upgrade the offensive line, which, to be fair, the right side of it wasn't elite last year, is smart. And you have the best inside linebacker of his little mini generation in Fred Warner. You'll get Dre Greenlaw back at some point. I have them at number 3. At number 2, the Detroit Lions. They have, in my opinion, clearly, almost unanimously at this point, the best offensive line in football. That makes their quarterback a top 10 quarterback. Jared Goff, in and of himself, is not a top 10 quarterback. In this situation, where he will be protected, where he plays almost all his games indoors, he is a top 10 quarterback. You add to that Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery out of the backfield. I know Gibbs got dinged up, I think, today or yesterday. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great receiver. Jameson Williams has great talent. He finally showed some flashes of that in the playoffs last year. You upgraded the defense, adding Marcus Davenport and Terrion Arnold in the first round of the draft. I don't see a real weakness on this roster right now. They are the number 2 roster. And then, of course, The number one roster in football is the roster that Patrick Mahomes is on. Why are they the number one roster in football? Well, we can just reveal it. There it is. It's not only because of Patrick Mahomes, but he sure does help. But you also have arguably the league's best defensive player, inarguably the league's most potent playoff weapon in Travis Kelce. Spent a first-round pick on the fastest player in league history. You had the second youngest defense in football last year. That was also statistically the second best defense in football. You lost one piece of it in L'Jarius Sneed, but you brought everyone else back. And I think you upgraded at left tackle with this rookie, Kingsley Suamata. After last year, it was Donovan Smith, and he was dealing with some injuries. They are the best roster in football. Greg Jennings, there it is, 5-1.
Okay, you know what's really funny? Oh man, I want to unpack this in a few different ways. Let's start where it ended, with the Kansas City Chiefs. Because, again, the biggest reason why they want to boost up Patrick Mahomes last year, saying it was so impressive that he was able to win with such a bad roster. But now Nick says that they have the best roster not just because of Patrick Mahomes. But he starts naming all these names. Travis Kelce, talk about the top defense, all this other stuff. So then I guess it's not that impressive if he has one of the best rosters in the NFL. Because yes, I know it's not the exact roster of last year. I understand that. But all the pieces that he's mentioning is because of that, okay? So it's just like, and now they beat last year. They didn't beat any other team with top rosters. At least, especially, again, I know the rosters have changed from last year to this year, so it's not a perfect overlap. But there is still plenty of overlap. They only beat the 49ers, who then Nick can, says, well, he thinks Brock Purdy is like a bottom 16 quarterback. So again, it's just really comical to me at this point. How inconsistent. He wants to talk about how important the quarterback is, but then just say things like, well, Brock Purdy's not that good of a quarterback, and neither is Jared Goff, but then that roster somehow elevates them to the top quarterback, and so now that they have a top roster, like, I don't understand why that doesn't still, cause a deficit to them. Doesn't really make sense to me, quite frankly. It seems a little inconsistent, especially because if we're talking about how a quarterback can maybe overcome some of those things, or hold back their team, I should say, well, then I would say that there's probably other rosters that can be up there as well. I also don't know how you could possibly not even mention the Houston Texans, the Green Bay Packers, the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, these are all teams that have been consistently, well, I shouldn't say consistently, within the last couple of years, have been a top team in the NFL. Okay, so to think that they don't even have a top 5 roster, especially when the Texans have gotten better, the Eagles have gotten better, the Packers have gotten better. It's just so obvious to me that those 3 teams, and as I always say, because I hate these lists, and I keep debating whether or not I want to keep even doing clips with these lists, because then I have to keep saying I don't like lists. I like to put teams in groups. I don't see it like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I put the Packers and the Lions and the 49ers and the Texans. I put them in a group together, and the Eagles. I don't have that ranking. So I'm constantly, every time when I'm trying to react to these lists, I have to constantly just emphasize that. And I don't know. I'm still kind of debating, because I know Nick does all his tiers and his list every single week or whatever during the football season. I'm like, do I want to keep doing that? I don't know. You guys let me know, honestly. But it's just hard when I see a list like this, and I want to be able to make a video and say, where on earth are the Texans? Where on earth are the Packers? Where on earth are the Eagles? Like, I don't know how you possibly can. I mean, what the Texans have done in this offseason, as Mangini highlighted before, like what they've added and what they've already had is unbelievable. And CJ Stroud is only going to get better. Same thing with Jordan Love. I'm not under the impression that Jordan Love is going to take this back seat. I'm not under the impression that Jordan Love is just, that was a fluke his last 10 games. I'm not under that impression at all. That team is only going to also grow and get better because of just the fact of their youth, and now they're getting better, just them individually, not even necessarily because some of the pieces that they added. So it's just, I just don't know how you can possibly leave that team off, leave those teams off. They didn't lose anyone, significantly. So it's one thing if those teams really kind of dropped or they had to, lose out on a few pieces. It just doesn't make sense. I just can't wrap my head around that. And it's funny. JCT Slice asked me this question. He said, if Caleb Williams doesn't make it to the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game, do you think he'll be ripped for that? And I was like, I don't think so, just because I forget exactly what I said to him. But, it was essentially like, I do think that as long as he's just pretty productive and successful himself, like, I don't think he'll get too ripped for not, like, taking the team to the Super Bowl. But it then begs the question because this is what he was kind of getting at, like, these are the expectations. If Caleb Williams actually has a top 4 roster in the NFL, well then, yeah, I don't care if you are a rookie, you better perform well, right? You better ball out. You better put out essentially the best numbers we've ever seen as a rookie quarterback, right? Like you're apparently given the most perfect situation to succeed. And that, that is a tremendous amount of pressure. And believe me, I've mentioned that I think that the Chicago Bears will be a really good team and will make the playoffs. Do I think that they are a top 4 roster? Because also, like, this is where we start to play games with words and semantics, right? Top 5 NFL rosters. Does that mean that you're the top 5 team? Right? Like, does that mean that you're a top 5 team? Are we saying that the Chicago Bears are the 4th best team? Because also he thinks that the Chicago Bears will be going to the Super Bowl. And if they're going to the Super Bowl, then why aren't they number 2? So is he saying that the Bears are worse than the 49ers and the Lions, yet they will beat them? Because that doesn't really make sense. Because if you're going to beat them, that means you're better than them. And if you want to admit you don't have to be better than them to beat them, well, then you have to admit that the Chiefs aren't the best team then in other situations then. So it just starts to get messy for me personally. I'm trying to think if there's any other teams that really stand out. I really need to start having a list of teams. It is very hard to think on the top. The Baltimore Ravens. I don't know if they have a top 5 roster. I'm on the fence about that. I did another video where there was a list and the Ravens were there, and I was like, I don't really know. I have a question mark. I'm not sure where Lamar Jackson goes this year. I believe Lamar Jackson is great. I just don't know what I believe in that coaching staff anymore. I've really kind of fallen out of love with Harbaugh at this point. I just do not like the game plans that they've been doing, and so I just don't know. And some of the other pieces that they've made, some of the other changes that they've made, I just don't know. That's just my honest question. I don't have strong feelings either way. They are definitely a team that I have to kind of watch and see for the first few weeks to get a better feeling, for who they are. Not to mention, for me, the Ravens have also just reached a point where it's just kind of like, I don't care what you do in the regular season anymore. Like, it really is like, can you get to the playoffs and actually have a great game plan and not get out coached and not do the opposite of what you've been doing? Right? Like, so to me, that's kind of why I find it personally more difficult for me to evaluate who the Baltimore Ravens are. But yeah, no. Listen, this list isn't complete. I'm not saying that this list is trash. It's just, to me, the hardest part is always just trying to boil things down to 5 teams. And then, again, getting into the definition of, like, well, how are we defining roster? Are we saying that this is the best team or just the best roster, right? It's like, it's just, can you play beyond who you are? Like Patrick Mahomes elevating a roster, which now makes them the best team, right? Like, I just don't know how it's officially, what are the parameters of this, which is why I'm just not a fan of lists. But apparently, as you guys have told me, like, lists are just huge. That's why, like, lists are super popular, and that's why these guys do these lists like every 5 seconds. I don't get it. I really don't. I just can't wrap my head around it. But yeah, no. I think if you just, yeah, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, so many of these teams, especially, it's so hard because the Bengals, we just have no idea, will Joe Burrow be able to stay healthy, right? So then it's like hard to say, because like if we're saying on day 1, do they have the best roster? Yeah, okay, we could say that they have a top 5 roster maybe. But then if you ask that same question about this team, do you think that they will be a top 5 team by the end of the season? Yes or no, right? Like, to me, you have to kind of continue that. Okay, the Bears have a top 5 roster. Do you think Caleb Williams will be able to be good enough as a rookie to carry that team to be a top 4 team, at the end of the season? Like, again, those questions, those aren't those can be mutually exclusive in a lot of ways. So it doesn't always kind of go hand in hand. So, but yeah, those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys think? Any teams that you think should be missing? Do you think this is a good list? Do you think it's insane for some of the teams? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.